There he is.
Hello?
Hello.
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 Hello all. Okay, it is 8 o'clock.
But I'll be home in 5 minutes. It's just I was
Okay.
delayed. So sorry for that. But I can hear you.
Say again?
I was saying I'm sorry. I'm delayed on my trip back home. I wanted to take this call from home. And well, it's been longer than I thought.
Yes, and you're in the car. But Pascal, first off, welcome everybody. I'm amazed at how easy it was to set up a couple of interim meetings. Of course, really, Pascal, I think that the session is exactly as you described it to the mailing list, which was to canvass the audience to understand, canvass the working group to understand what the opens are or what issues are at hand with this draft, because it's fairly mature. And we had promised at the last IETF to have a number of these sessions in an attempt to vet some of the issues before the session that's coming up in Philadelphia. And it's too bad we won't see you in person, Pascal. It'll be my first work-related trip in person since COVID, so I'm very much looking forward to it, and hope I will see some others of you there. But I think I will hand over to you, Pascal, to see, to kind of hear what your assessment is, and then ask others who have come to join the meeting as well. Another agenda item is to help Karina with maybe some advice at the end of the call about some of the translation issues between XML and RFC format, but we'll get there eventually. Did you want to say something to that effect, Karina?
That would be great. I just posted my problem on the raw mailing list, so you can see what I have in the XML and what is the converter saying to me. So I have no clue where my problem is at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you for your help in advance.
Okay. Pascal, would you like to lead off?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're a little faint,
I was saying
but
for the next 2-3 minutes, I might be interrupted because I'm in the dark zone, and then I will be home. So if you wouldn't mind, stop just for the next 2 minutes. That way you might avoid me to lose the contact.
Right on cue, Pascal, you kind of dropped out. Yeah, we can't really hear you. Can anyone else hear Pascal? Is it just me?
I cannot hear him either. This is Carlos, but I think he just said that he's commuting
He'll be home in a couple minutes.
So I guess if we can discuss any other thing before, or that will be helpful, I guess.
Are there others who want to queue up some discussion topics so that by the time Pascal gets home, we will have some items enumerated? Oh, hi, Carlos.
Hi, if you allow me, just one minor thing. If you remember in the last meeting, I presented something about multi-domain RAW. So I just wanted to kind of poll the working group or the people here, if there is anybody interested in pursuing that topic, to contact me via the mailing list or offline, because I would like to continue on that line of work, but of course only if people are willing to contribute and they think that is interesting stuff.
Remind me the name of the draft again. It was multi.
It was draft. Let me quickly.
Oh, you don't have to type the exact thing. Just the title was
It's Bernardo's multi-domain OIM or something like that.
multi-domain.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The multi-domain draft. Okay. So you're soliciting participation there, and Karina soliciting help. And we await Pascal to arrive at home and have connectivity. I see Janos here. I know that you were someone who had, oh, Pascal is back. But I know, Janos, you had some thoughts as well about the draft. So, or if you had some gaps or issues you want to queue up for when Pascal returns. For those of you who might care, I guess the tool, I am taking notes, not a lot happening just yet until we have our main author back. Is there anyone else on the participant list who would like to? Oh, you're back.
Yes, I'm sorry, I just arrived, but my my phone is not the best tool, so I will join again from the PC, but I will be listening in the meantime. But I'm
okay.
Here. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. We are we just awaiting. We're just canvassing folks who have taken the time to attend to see if they have any issues that they would like to raise to the top of the list.
So if no one volunteers the topic, then my main topic is basically the content of this document. And the side question is, do we cover the raw architecture in general, or just more specifically the PSC? So what do we expect from raw?
And were you, I know that in your email that you posted, you had wondered whether there were more issues like OAM and lower layer information, or, kind of specifying at what layer, better specificity about which layer RAW operates at. I think there's a little bit of a guessing game going on because we don't have Lou in this call. But if those of you, if anybody on the call, has some opinions about, past conversations about it or about the document itself, please just jump in. Pascal, what are your thoughts? I mean, so what motivates you to ask that question? So, what's the expectation from RAW?
Sorry, the interface of the phone is not great. Oh, my PC is coming up. But basically, my motivation is really Lou. So if Lou is not there, Lou candidated to provide new sections in the architecture, and my understanding is it was supposed to cover the topics that I was talking about in this email. But
okay.
so it was a guessing game after that.
Yes, I would say so. I think, unfortunately, that both Lou and Rick are on vacation. I did send out some email to both of them yesterday saying, if you're not going to attend, do you have some thoughts to share for the conversation? But I think they are happily on vacation and not reading their email, which is what everyone should be doing, I suppose, but when they're on vacation. But it leaves this this meeting a little hollow, to say the least. The other point is that we do have this other interim meeting that we scheduled in 2 weeks, and maybe that's our kind of final call, which is, you know, to have more runway for the topics that were suggested as changes, and if, you know, we just need to put a time on receiving that material, and move the document along otherwise. So I would say thank you for your patience, Pascal, because I know it's been a while since we first began these conversations, probably since the beginning of the year. Anyone else have some thoughts they want to add, either procedural or content?
Yeah, this is Carlos again. I'm not sure exactly what Lou had in mind about the comments, but from my side, I think that the document is quite okay, but I would appreciate maybe a bit, but that's a personal opinion, a bit more details on examples, maybe having an appendix or something like that, an annex with some examples of how the architecture could look like. And also the role of the PSC and the difference between the PSC when it's distributed PSC when it's a kind of more centralized one. These kind of things, like clarifying discussion, at least for me, will be helpful. Then I don't know what to keep in the document, but at least maybe starting with an annex or something just to provide additional details will be good for me. But
is it really the architecture? I mean, Carlos, I'm confused here, trying to understand what you want, but it looks like an applicability statement or something that you're after. And I'm just concerned that if we provide such a thing, people might, in this document, I mean, I understand that RAW could provide it, and that would be neat, actually. But in this document, I'm a bit concerned because it might lead people to view the architecture as constrained to the use case we provide. And if we want to keep, you know, people's mind wide open to what you could do with this, then providing example might actually constrain that thinking. So it's a double-edged sword. Yes, people might understand better, but at the same time, they might limit the understanding of the scope of the architecture to something. That's just. But no, producing the work that you're talking about makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just not 100% sure it belongs to the architecture document specifically.
Okay, that will be fine with me, of course. Maybe having that discussion may help us, identifying if something is missing in the architecture document, and that doesn't necessarily mean that discussion belongs to that document. I agree with that as well.
I see that. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. The way we define this is, we said the architecture is kind of something we propose at the start, and that gives us kind of the scope of our activity. And the framework is published at the end and provides the how-to to achieve the architecture, at least in the domains that we'll support. So it might be that we would package what you're talking about in the framework and saying, you know, if you want to do this use case, use the framework this way. Could be. At the level of the architecture, it might be that it's too early and too vague to really apply it square and fair and square. When you do it with a framework, you know, oh, it's use this RFC this way, this RFC this way, and package them this way, and then you get the result A. at the level of the architecture, it seems much harder. So I'm just thinking out loud here. But when we've done the work, we'll be a lot more specific on how you can achieve a particular scenario. Makes sense? Makes no sense?
I wonder if we start to ask what are those scenarios and begin to populate the framework doc.
That would be great. And actually, there is a section where we say we have two major use cases. One of them as a mesh. That's where we have the multi-hop and the little overlay between source and destination where we want determinism. And the other use case is when we just focus on the access, like you've got this phone which has 5G, Wi-Fi, multiple interfaces, and you want to know if you should use one of the interfaces, a sub-collection of the interfaces, etc., to achieve the level of reliability that you want. And so do we have more scenarios? I mean, all this belongs to the framework. That's actually great. It's not really the discussion for the architecture, but for the framework, it makes a lot of sense.
I have another question that I'm not sure where that belongs to, but for example, the kind of interoperability or integration with DetNet, that's something I would like also to have like a bit more discussion, because, and this is related to the multi-domain thing I mentioned, that I foresee in the future that we will have not purely wired or purely wireless scenarios where we want to provide some determinism, reliability. So for me, it will be good to understand how we foresee that to work if we have some wire segment connected to a wireless domain, how the DetNet plus RAW architectures fit in together.
And in fact, that seems very plausible. I mean, my recollection also was that very early on when we were chartering the group or shortly afterwards, there was explicit discussion about exactly these kind of pockets of wired islands that would be connected by wireless or vice versa. So naturally the bridge is, you want to be able to support heterogeneous kinds of multi-subnet scenarios. Heterogeneous meaning wired and wireless mixed.
Actually, hi everyone, I'm speaking. Like hearing a little bit the interworking of RAW and DetNet, like just this phrase was a bit of a surprise for me, because I fully agree on the heterogeneous domains and so on. That's what we are after. But when we were discussing the chartering of RAW, at least my takeaway was that RAW is an extension of DetNet towards wireless. So if we do a good job, then there is no need to figure out interworking. Like it at some point it was discussed if this work should be done in DetNet or not, and at least that was my takeaway from the chartering, that RAW is a sort of a wireless extension, wireless specific aspects defined for the base defined by DetNet. If it is not the case, then if we need some interworking, then maybe we have not done a good job in RAW and we went away from the DetNet architecture. Just my 2 cents.
Can I just repeat back to you what I think you're saying? I think we're actually in agreement with just maybe the emphasis being the RAW is this examination of in what ways DetNet might have overlooked architectural issues that need support so that RAW, the wireless cases will function seamlessly. So I'm violently agreeing that there's not a separate architecture so much as we start with DetNet and we look for places that may not support fully or have been overlooked or gaps. And that is the ultimate deliverable from the RAW working group, is that gap analysis.
Completely agree with Shadows. I mean, if we do a good job, we are features which don't, first of all, there is nothing that says it can only work on wireless. So if we do an extension, on the first hand, it has to be completely compatible with .NET. It's kind of an extension, an option, if you like. And on the other hand, it could be placed, like Carlos said, it could be placed on devices which are connected with wire and wireless. And it would basically, the PSC would decide over every interface, whether they are wired or wireless, where you place the copy. It's just that wireless creates a situation which is much harder than wire, for which the PSC is much more needed, but it doesn't mean that it will not work for wire. I mean, it's just an interface. It's just a better interface. And probably if you have wire, there will be less use of the wireless, and as much as possible, the wire will be used. But if somebody walks on the wire, or cuts the wire, and don't tell me it does not happen, then the wireless will be there. And you'll maintain the quality, because you might use 1, 2, 3 wireless interfaces in parallel to ensure you maintain your delivery. So I'm completely in agreement with both Carlos and Janos. And I don't think what they said is opposed, right? I think they also agree with one another from what I understand. So we are all on the same page. Now, to Carlos' point, does the architecture reflect that? I hope it does. As part of the review with the work group last call, when we do it, we certainly want to ensure that this is the case, right? I mean, we should not pass this document if it is not compatible or fully compatible with .NET. Now, there is one caveat, is that some use cases we have are not fully .NET end-to-end. If you look at the access use case, we kind of say, hey, we'll decide whether we replicate over one or more of the access interfaces, like 5G, Wi-Fi in parallel, or one of them, or 3 Wi-Fi and no 5G, or 1 5G, 1 Wi-Fi. You decide. And we basically attribute any loss, end-to-end loss, L3 loss, to the access link, meaning that whether the prime is on the access link or on the rest of the way, we attribute the issue to the access link, and we want high reliability, but the deterministic latency goes away. Because if you don't have .NET on all hops or end-to-end, latency goes away. You cannot guarantee it, but at least you can guarantee delivery and optimize the amount of delivery by using diversity. That would be the only game that we can play in that case. So with that, we kind of depart from the fully .NET use cases. We extend beyond that, but I guess it's okay still. Because basically this use case was listed to us at the beginning. When we started this group and started working on this, the access use case was not really there. But when we talked to people, that they always came back with this use case. I mean, the foremost use case is, should I use two Wi-Fi, 1 Wi-Fi, 1 5G, 2 5G? I mean, what should I use at this moment? And yes, the PSC can resolve that. So if you ask to have .NET end-to-end to exercise a PSC, we have a problem, because this use case is a foremost use case. So that's when.
Wait, so you're saying that the access use case is the foremost use case?
I believe that when I'm hearing people and getting feedback about what we do at RAW, they care a lot about that use case. They want it.
Okay.
And in that use case, basically RAW monitors the first hop, which is the wireless access, but we care about the end-to-end delivery. And so basically we say the most of the time the failing chain, this capable element is the first hop, is the wireless. So we attribute any delay or error to the wireless, even if it's not the case. But since you're not .NET end-to-end, you cannot guarantee. You could be, right? If you are, then you're back to the first case. But if you're not .NET on all paths end-to-end, which is the real case of a phone today, I think RAW still can do something with the PSC. And so it would be sad to say not covered. And that's why we have this use case. And yes.
I see. So, and by the first use case, you're talking about the mesh use case?
Yeah, the first use case, the one we came up with when we started this work, right? We say we have this big thing, and then inside there is this little mesh, which is the sort of mesh that RAW is building right now with the DAO projection work. And in that case, we are .NET end-to-end, and we fully should obey the .NET architecture. Now, in the case where we only monitor the access at layer 2, but pay the price for IP end-to-end, we are not .NET end-to-end because we basically use the PSC just to decide which access link is going to be used. And in that use case, yeah, we don't obey the thing that we guarantee the latency and we are .NET all the way through, because we are not.
I see.
So if we want to drop this use case, but a lot of people will be unhappy if we do, right?
Yeah.
So if I may just, I mean, I agree with what Pascal said, and just to provide a comment on the integration or interoperability point. I'm not saying, just to clarify also to Janos, that what RAW is doing is not compatible. I'm just saying that I think it will be useful to have documented somewhere how this interoperability is achieved, also for the sake of checking that we are doing a good job. But I think that's a useful piece of information. And since we have the architecture and the framework, maybe we can find a way or a place to have that discussion.
Greg? I haven't been managing the queue, so I've been appreciating that people are self-managing, but go ahead, Greg. We haven't heard from you yet.
I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with the end-to-end terminology, because that reminds me of the discussion we had in discussing IETF network slice. So the IETF network slice is a construct to provide the transport network connectivity for 5G network slice. And 5G does not use end-to-end either, but it looks at it as a 5G network slice covers access network and core network. The DetNet itself could be a technology to provide constrained connections in a transport network, so to realize IETF network slice. So I would probably look at what RAW is doing in this architecture in the case that RAW is delivering the access, and that probably would be classified as non-3GPP access. And then we can connect to 5G network slice and then include transport network realized using the DetNet. So I would not look at it as replacing, but complementary technology, where the RAW provides access and DetNet provides their transport network connectivity.
Greg, if I may answer, that's perfectly fine with me, the way you're describing it. So just two remarks. One is, you can deploy DetNet between the phone, the access, and across the 5G core, and beyond the 5G core. I mean, it's whatever the internet is, but then DetNet provides only the guarantees between the device and the exit of the 5G core. So that's perfectly okay. DetNet covers from an entry point to an exit point. You can also say RAW does the distribution on the device with the PSC. And then if you decide to use 5G, miracle, the packet will have all the guarantees all the way through the core as well. And that's neat. It's RAW from the first hop, and then DetNet inside the core, and then whatever at the end. So then again, since it's not DetNet end-to-end, we don't have latency guarantees. It's just my observation is the way we describe it in the architecture and the framework is completely compatible with what you say. There is no position in my mind. We basically say, hey, we monitor when we can, whatever, if we can ping or something to any OEM or get any radio information on the first hop, we leverage that. And then we observe, and that's really OAM, and that's really your work. We observe the end-to-end IP. And if effectively you go through a very reliable 5G slice, and if the rest after, the rest of the internet is nothing, pretty much nothing, then effectively we'll get a very good result in this OAM, and the PSC will certainly favor that particular interface as being very reliable and working very well. But we'll not observe what goes in the core. The core will be transparent. We'll just observe that between the station, the user equipment or whatever, and the server, we have a good end-to-end reliability, because we cannot observe the individual ops. That's what we say in that use case. If we can, we observe the first hop, whatever we can gather as information on the first hop. But anyway, what we care about is this layer 3 OAM. Between the source and the destination, we get whether what we send on that particular path works or not versus the rest. But the difference is in the mesh case, we effectively will use OAM at each hop. We will observe everything, and we'll get a much finer observation of which path or subpath we can take. For instance, in the mesh case, you can decide to use the top path and then go to the bottom path and finish with the bottom path, just because there is an error in some links somewhere along the end of the top path. That's not the sort of thing you can do with the access use case. We basically monitor. We say, if we send over this radio, we get this result end-to-end. If we send over that radio, we get this result. But we have no feedback from the 5G core. We just see it works. You see what I mean? That's the difference between the two use cases. I hope I was clear. I'm not too sure.
And I welcome others to join the notes. I've been capturing things, and I'll re-listen to the recording. But please join in if you'd like, in terms of the note-taking.
Yes, Pascal, you touched very interesting question. And so how end-to-end SLA to be provided by the components? Because if we disaggregate their network slice or the service, so we can monitor end-to-end, and at the same time, as you described in the mesh, we can monitor and optimize each hop. And there are several questions here that I'm very much interested in exploring and discussing. One of them is that, okay, what metrics we use, so what metrics could be used best to create additive metric. And there are different works being done in the industry to do that. So to allow disaggregation of service level objectives in the different components, so that we can have predictable quality of service delivered. And at the same time, it will help us to localize and optimize elements, components of the network. So I just wanted, so my thought was that not to put DetNet and RAW against each other, but I'm looking at them, these technologies, as complementary.
What I like in the way you discussed it is we can see two use cases. One of them is RAW kind of over DetNet, meaning that you have all the DetNet support in every hops, and that's the mesh case. And DetNet has new services on top of that, and that's the PSC, right? So that's one use case. And the other use case is DetNet on a certain part of the way, and RAW basically has a front end to it. So you manage the access with RAW. And once the access is passed, DetNet takes over, and for RAW, it's finished. It's just, so this is more like the access case. And so it kind of matches what we have in mind. On the other hand, I'm just wondering if we describe enough of that in the architecture. We need to stay high level, but for instance, what you say about additive metrics and disaggregated basically functions, should we put more text in the architecture about this? Would you have some suggestion? Because for this call, that's what we are after. We're saying, hey, we need to publish the architecture so we can start the work. And the architecture should basically give us, the kind of the format in which we're working, and the terms and the functions that we need to provide, etc. So we discuss OAM, but do we do it in enough detail and not too much detail? That's always the problem. We need to leave room for the work. So we cannot impose everything at the architecture level. It's vague enough. But on the other hand, if there are important architectural concepts like this disaggregation, it should be cited. So you see what I'm after. I mean, what I said in that email is there are topics like layer 2 metrics, layer 2 information, and I was thinking about Lou really because he knows DLEAP, and the way it works and why, etc. But yes, OAM is the other very, very critical thing. And we have a high-level description of OAM, but if you could, in your review of the architecture before we publish, or even before the workgroup last call, look at it and see if what you've said can be covered within the architecture, is not described enough and should be described. I mean, I would really appreciate that feedback. Like I said, OAM is a key component in this OODA.
Can I echo back what I think you're saying is that you want to give enough detail, but not too much detail. There's this fine line that you're wanting these reviews to really scrutinize that, what that boundary is.
But not to the sky, exactly. And basically getting, since really Greg is the expert, getting feedback on how much OAM we cover and the real architecture of OAM, whether you do it in band, etc., that needs to be covered. And the concept of disaggregation is not covered. And I was wondering if we should mention it and have some text about it. That was my question.
If I can chime in, I think what Pascal said is very relevant now. And for me, what is important is to understand the overhead that creates or that makes having this end-to-end, considering the wireless segment, taking the DECnet perspective, this end-to-end control with respect to controlling the wireless segment and then having some sort of overall view of this wireless segment and then joining the DECnet or the wired segment and having this aggregation at different let's say, components in the network. And this is important if the type of or the overhead for signaling, it's very different in the two parts of the network.
So I think what I'm hearing is that there is quite a bit of interest in this access use case, that it should be included in the two use cases. You talked about multiple interfaces, but that was different than the access use case. So there's really three here, Pascal.
Let's hear your last words, Eve. There was some room.
Oh, I was just saying that given the amount of conversation and discussion here, that when we first started out, you said, oh, well, we have these two use cases. It sounds like this third use case warrants inclusion.
Yeah, and then again, the use cases are really in the framework, right? They are not in the architecture. And unless I'm really mistaken.
Right, so, but I think we capture it there because we do have now a separate framework document that just, let's begin to populate it with
exactly
the cases now, even if we're in some ways we're working backwards and forwards at the same time. The framework is kind of working backwards and the architecture document is working forward.
It makes a lot of sense, right? We need to understand what framework we want to have in mind to like what Carlos said, to make sure we have enough in the architecture. And the problem is not too much and publish so we can start the work. And so we need to have this third use case in mind. I completely agree. The question is, what of this discussion impacts the architecture? What's missing in the architecture? And the thing for me that I heard that's really missing in the architecture, and then in the framework, certainly we can have more stuff. But in the architecture, it was more the points that Greg made about basically do we do row over .NET or row first and then .NET? And this needs to be kind of shown in some picture, I think. So that's missing. And then there were the points about, and I'm very glad that we have this discussion and this comes out. I was, I don't know OAM enough, and I'm contributing when I can to the OAM work, but I'm not an author on that level. And so Greg's feedback with what's happening and disaggregation and stuff, I mean, kind of raises a flag in me, saying, hey, we could describe better the way the OAM can be done and what could be included, and in particular responsibilities, right? We discussed a little bit that there is a layer 3 OAM end-to-end that it's used to measure the access, for instance, even if so it's really abstract, the rest, or some more thing which captures the leap at every hop. So we have that discussion, but do we have enough? Do we talk enough about responsibilities and objects and components? And maybe we need to have names associated to components doing this thing and that thing. And if we need that, then that should be in the architecture, and that's missing. Because we don't go to that detail. In the .NET architecture, we do, right? If you look at this, we talk about the service layer, and we say you do those things, and you have the both stack, the sender, the receiver, and you say, oh, here you're doing at this level, you're doing replication elimination. At this layer, you're doing forwarding, whatever. I mean, this is described, and it makes sense. It belongs to the architecture. So if we need OAM components which have specific functions, and they have names and responsibilities as well, probably we need that drawing. Greg?
Thank you, Pascal. I agree with you, and we worked at .NET on OEM component, but as additional complementary set of documents. So we are finalizing .NET OEM framework, and we have 2 more documents that analyze .NET over IP and .NET over MPLS OEM specific aspects. So if we look, when I look at raw architecture document, I think it sufficiently covers OEM issue, and so it can progress. If we feel that there are more things that we need to discuss in regard to OEM aspects in raw or in some use cases, I think that can be perfectly addressed in additional documents, in further documents.
Oh, this is great, actually. So yes, you're the expert. I will trust you. And anyway, yes, most of the how-to specifically does not belong to the architecture, right? The architecture says what we do, does not go into detail of how we do it. That's the framework. Because how we do it, we'll know in the end. So if that's so, if the OAM is probably good enough, then we're back to the original question. I mean, what specifically are we needing in this document to go work plus core? So I still have this to do on showing .NET and row, either row over .NET in the mesh case, or row first and .NET second in the access case, where .NET covers the core and row the access. So this is a nice picture that I can draw and explain. It's beyond the use case, because it's beyond the framework, because here you're talking about what kind of service you do end-to-end and how the functions are separated. So this is architecture, and we need it. With that, I mean, and that's the ball in your hands now.
Yeah, I would agree. This was actually a great conversation. Even though Lou isn't here, we can. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. To get to working group last call, what I heard you say also was that we can, perhaps draw these diagrams of this kind of relationship between RAW and DetNet for the use cases we've discussed here. RAW over DetNet, RAW preceding DetNet for the access, the wireless access, followed by the core coverage. And that might be okay to include because it's about the relationships and is architectural. And then also, Greg, I completely agree that kind of following suit that if it was good to hear you as the expert say the architecture document covers OAM enough. And if there are more issues, we could, as you've done in DetNet, create additional OAM docs.
OAM docs, and we will effectively explain how they work in the framework. And it has started effectively. So all this is very compatible. I mean, we are on the same page. That's really, really cool. Now the question remains: when do we publish the architecture? When do we do last call? I understand that Lou is not with us, so we will need his feedback.
His input, yes. And in fact, what's good is that we, although it's unfortunate that this coincided with his vacation, we had originally asked for 3 meetings, the first of which apparently was too soon, so they didn't schedule it for us. But we do have a 2-week stretch. Hopefully he will be back in that 2 weeks, and we should kind of queue up that the next interim meeting, which is on July 15th, that hopefully if there are additional topics that he'd like to air before working group last call, that's what we plan for in that meeting. And that's what we solicit from the mailing list explicitly.
So Eve, what I suggest is I'll try to embed the discussion of today, at least in the document, published before the cutoff. I cannot be in Philadelphia, by the way. I'm so sorry about this.
That's okay. We know how to get you in. We know to key you in. So at least now we're all very comfortable with all this online hybrid virtual conferencing. So the question is, we have, I'm trying to think what the timing is. I don't remember. I think we're on Thursday, maybe one of the morning sessions. So it shouldn't be too bad for you. It's maybe a 5 or 6 hour difference from the East Coast.
It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I will be missing the corridor discussions. I'm really sad.
Yes. It would be nice to see you in person. And hopefully some of the rest of you who are on the call will be there in person. But I like the idea that you'll embed some of the discussion today into the document. It looks, however, like Janos, you're in the queue. Like I said, I wasn't really looking a whole lot at the queue, but please jump in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just I was wondering about the timing of the start of the working group last call, and maybe actually it could be good to do it after IETF-RAW-20220701-1500, just because at least some of us being in the same place, we may have further fruitful discussions.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable.
We somehow relate that to Pascal, and we will be missing you, Pascal, for sure. Just because, I was thinking, starting it before IETF.
It's crazy. There's so much going on. People will miss it either because they're busy or they're getting too much email. So I agree. It's not like it postpones things much further. It's probably just, it moves things out a couple of weeks.
I agree. I mean, we have the next meeting where hopefully Lou will give us inputs. Then we will have to under all those inputs. The prime is probably it's going to be too late to publish anything before IETF. So there will not be a document with all Lou's inputs inside before IETF. That cannot be. So we don't even have the document ready to start our group last call, at IETF, unless we can publish, on Monday or something of the IETF. So it's completely a stretch goal to start it right after the IETF. That is already a very stretch goal. And I agree with Janos, and I don't believe that. After that, it's August, many people are on vacation. So the best can do is probably September. And since
Okay.
even in September, some people are in vacations, it would probably be all the month of September, something like that,
Okay.
just to make sure people have time. I mean, that's the way I see it. That's really the best can do.
Yeah, it seems pragmatic, realistic. Okay. Any other issues or concerns? Otherwise, I'd like to give you all back the last 10 minutes. I'm really pleased with this discussion. I found it really helpful. I hope the rest of you did as well. And thank you for taking the time to show up. Very much appreciated. And please feel free to have a look. I did try to capture the discussion, Pascal, in the minutes, and all corrections and extensions and additions welcome. And I presume there'll be a recording that will also that folks can listen to for the recap as well. And so with that, why don't let's call it a wrap. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, wait. Karina, did you get your question answered?
Yes, I got it. Thank you very much.
I just opened up the chat window and I could see I've been taking minutes, so I have not been looking at the chat window.
No, Carlos quickly found it. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
So the updated draft will come beginning next week.
That's wonderful to hear. I think it's going to pave the way as our first document, and we're really pleased with the quality of the document and the rigor with which everybody involved has answered each and every detailed and question and minutia. It's been very educational also, given the timing of, that this document precedes a document that really describes how the technology works over IP. So that's been some of our challenge.
We did a lot of improvement, and I think you were also on the list where we directly marked how we addressed the different comments we received. So I guess, better to say, we hope it now goes smoothly. So most likely you need to tell us then what to do, or if it's directly go back to the IESG. I do not know.
I don't know either, actually.
Okay, so we do the post and
we'll
then just answer or put all the others in the list, and then we're gonna see. I think they directly get the information as soon as we upload a new version also. So let's see. Yeah,
and the tools will help do that diff, by the way. So that'll be great.
Yeah, that's perfect. And one of us will join remotely in Philadelphia and present briefly the updates we did based on the feedback we got. So we are also in the live queue then.
Wonderful. Okay, now it's a wrap.
Yeah,
thank you, everyone.
So enjoy the morning, evening, and lunchtime, whatever in which time zone everyone is.
Exactly. And I'm just staying online to capture some of the comments in the chat.
Yes.
In the minutes, and so that's why I'm still here.
Great.
Okay.
So I will now close my office for today. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Maybe you can stop recording.
How do I do that? Do I just click on the recording?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Oh, because I'm still working on grabbing some of the comments from the chat.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a nice long weekend.
Oh, bye-bye. You too. I'm
Bye.
finally done as well. Okay. Enjoy the weekend. I don't know if you get a long weekend because you're an international company.
No, we don't. It's different.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, enjoy your weekend nonetheless. Great to
Thank
have you
you.
here. Thank you for showing up. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.